In some people, persistence is a virtue. In other people, it's not. Good morning. Happy Friday. I was up late last night. I love the law and I love the debate, and there's one thing you learn about the law when you're actually a lawyer is that, number one, just because you find a case on point doesn't mean you've won. Being a lawyer is about taking the law and taking the facts and making a good argument about why you should win, applying the facts to the law or the law to the facts, whichever way you need to do to get it done. If, for example, someone drops a Supreme Court case and says you lose because of this Supreme Court case, or for example a Supreme Court of Rhode Island case, and says, oh, this city ordinance, you can't arrest someone for, or excuse me, an arrest for disturbing the peace under this fact pattern, under this very specific fact pattern, would not be supported by probable cause, which is a very low bar of proof, because of this Supreme Court case. Unless the facts are identical, then you haven't actually proven anything. You haven't proven it. And I'm serious about that. You really, like, for example, fighting word statutes. Georgia's fighting word statute was challenged in the U.S. Supreme Court, where the U.S. Supreme Court said, oh, well, you know, the Georgia Supreme Court hasn't defined down their fighting words statute to just fighting words, so it's unconstitutional. And then the Georgia legislature just added in text saying, hey, fighting words mean fighting words. And now it's probably constitutional. Almost identical statute, does almost identical things. Guy got away with it in one case because it was vague or overbroad. It was overbroad. That's what it was. So if someone is, say, for example, taking a stand, if he's arrested under a Georgia fighting word statute, you can't just look at that Supreme Court case and be like, oh, well, you win, buddy. There's a lot more to it. And anybody who thinks that just by throwing down a case, they've won, they have no idea what they're talking about. No matter what their protestations are, they have no idea what they're talking about. You can walk into court, and I've done this, with cases that you think are just going to win the day, and then have the judge start picking holes in it. And if your argument isn't right, you're going to lose. If you have spent all of your time on the cases and not thinking about your argument, thinking about how you're going to present it, anticipating what that judge is going to ask you that's going to poke little holes in your argument, then, you know, it's more complex than a lot of people want to believe. And if a lawyer tells you that he can make good arguments, or a variety of arguments, good, weak, and would have to watch the whole video to be sure, but will probably be able to make a good argument. If a lawyer tells you that, then you may want to consider that there may be an argument there. But yes, I do love to argue about stuff like that. And it does keep me from sleeping. My boy Nigel, he's also a good solid guy. He's gonna stand up for what he believes in. I mean, he's wrong, but he's going to stand up for what he believes in, and I got to respect that. Now there are plenty of cases. Of course, he doesn't cite any of them. Plenty of cases that Supreme Court's ruled on that differentiate freedom of the press and give the reporters and journalists some sort of extra protection that normal citizens don't have. Plenty. And what is one of those? Well, he cites freedom to gather information. Well, hot damn, that sounds good, doesn't it? Hot damn. What does... Hey, Nigel, if you're listening, and I know you are because you love me and you can't get enough of me, how about you figure out what exactly a reporter can do to gather information under the Constitution, what right a reporter has in gathering information that you or I don't have. Go ahead and name it. The right to gather information. I've never actually seen it in a Supreme Court case, so it could be there. I mean, there's a lot of Supreme Court cases. But I have seen it in lower court cases, and the right to gather information is essentially just the right to have your eyes open and your ears unblocked. You're walking down the street and you see someone get mugged. You've just gathered information, and you could report that to a reporter, and the reporter can come up and ask you about what information you gathered. You know who else could come up and ask you about what information you've gathered? Just an average person. Freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of association. It's another little phrase that sounds like it means something, and I'm sure Nigel will impute to it the right to film and all other sorts of wonderful things without supplying even the slightest hint of a citation. And he'll be wrong doing it. But, you know, par for the course, my man, par for the course. Speaking of providing citations, if you are going to provide citations, well, number one, if I ask you for a citation, that doesn't mean that I will be hurt, upset, or offended if you provide it. If I'm asking for a citation, that means I would love to have a citation. I don't know everything. You may have figured that out. I am not omniscient. There are lots of cases out there. There are lots of Supreme Court cases. I don't know all of them. I don't even know a percent point worth of them, because there are lots and lots and lots, and I know rough ideas of maybe 20, maybe 30. I don't know a full percentage point of Supreme Court cases. I know maybe 0.5% or 0.25% or 0.1%. And I know even fewer non-Supreme Court cases. So if I ask for a citation, I would be overjoyed to get a citation. Because unlike most of these people, unlike Nigel, I would prefer to be right. I would prefer to be right. And people who have provided me citations in the past may have been rewarded with a thank you. Or, hey, now I know. Or they may have been rewarded with a, hey, you're wrong. Hey, this doesn't say exactly what you think it says. Maybe you should read it. But that's basically my admonition for you this morning, is if you are going to provide me with a citation, there's a strong likelihood that I'm going to read it. So you probably should read it before you cite it. Don't just Google it and find something that at first blush looks like maybe it'll do it. You know, and I'm not going to call out this person's name because this person gets picked on a lot, and I think the person who did this just isn't the brightest bulb in the candelabra. But I think this person is well-intentioned. And the reason why I think he's well-intentioned is because when I point this out, he apologizes and recognizes that he should probably be more thorough. But there was in the red light thing, like I really care about the red light cameras, but somebody said that the Supreme Court of Ohio has ruled that red light cameras are some violation of the Constitution. Or something along those lines. Doesn't really matter. But anytime anybody says something like that, if I'm even remotely interested in hearing about it, I'll ask for a citation, because I don't know anything about the Supreme Court of Ohio, and they may have ruled on it, but I would love to know, because if they have determined that it is unconstitutional under the U.S. Constitution, that's a whole different ball of wax. And if they determine it's unconstitutional under the Ohio Constitution, you get where I'm coming from. So saying that the Supreme Court of Ohio found something to be unconstitutional still leaves a lot of questions hanging in the air. And it would be interesting to know, simply from a interesting to know point of view, if Ohio outlawed, or if the Ohio Supreme Court determined that red light cameras violated the Ohio Constitution. That would be interesting to know. So I asked for a citation. Anyway, the original person who said that obviously never got back to me, because, you know, that's nothing new. However, somebody else, the well-intentioned yet, I don't want to really be too mean right now, but the well-intentioned yet oftentimes wrong fella came back, zing, pow, don't you feel stupid now, with 3 citations, one of which was not to the Supreme Court of Ohio, and the other 2, if I remember correctly, were to the same case, both of which held that it was unconstitutional for the legislature of Ohio to outlaw cameras, to outlaw the red light cameras. They were infringing upon the constitutional rights of the municipality. I believe it was under the Ohio state constitution. I really stopped reading after the initial blurb, because it didn't say what they thought it said, so there was no point in reading it further. Speaking of which, that is something that I do to save time and effort. If I start reading what you've written and I come across a premise, because what a lot of my commenters like to do, a lot of the detractors like to do it, and some of the people who actually support me do it too, is they will make a comment that is more than 1 sentence long. And that's fine, you can do it, but your odds of error rise exponentially when you start doing that. And in their comment, they will start off with maybe a premise that's right, and then a premise that's wrong, and then more premises, and more stuff beyond that, and then some sort of argument based on those premises, one or more of which they've already determined is wrong. If that happens, I normally just write wrong underneath it, because it's wrong. Any argument based on a false premise is a bad argument. And I don't need to go further. I don't need to read your whole argument, because there is a premise that is wrong or unsupported. If it's entirely just an assertion that needs a support, then yeah. So that's your about 5 hours of sleep kind of ramble. A little less than 5 hours of sleep. But what the hell, right? It's Friday. It's Friday. Today, if everything goes the way I think it's going to go, I'm going to get a haircut. Yay. I'm going to get my shoes professionally polished. Yay. Haircut shoes. Oh, and I might be hunting for a watch. A watch, you say? You've never worn a watch in your life. Well, I have worn a watch once or twice, but pretty much not really ever worn one like on a daily basis. However, appearances mean something. Appearances really mean something. Taking his stand was, they thought he was an attorney when he rolled in, at least according to his. I have no reason to not believe him. But yeah, you roll into court, you look like $1 million, you feel like $1 million. You know, you're not dirty, you're not unshaven, you're not smelling like an ashtray. You walk into court clean, confident, and dressed appropriately, people will assume you're an attorney, because just spend a day in a court and you'll see people looking all sorts of raggedy, and you'll start being able to pick out, you'll be able to pick out the cops in suits because they'll have the guns, and you'll be able to pick out the attorneys with probably like a 90% success ratio. So yeah, it's part of the look. That, and I don't think clients particularly appreciate it if you're looking at a cell phone to tell the time while they're talking to you, whereas it's easier to surreptitiously look at your wrist. Or, you know, they're not going to be assuming that you're bored. They're going to be assuming that you're looking at the time. They may assume you're bored, but whatever. There's only so much you could do, and if you're getting paid by the billable hour, then maybe they should be interested that you're paying attention to the time. It's always fun to tell a client, look, you really can't afford to keep talking to me about your personal life, so how about we end this conversation so I don't charge you $35 an hour, or $35 every 6 minutes to tell me how evil somebody is or how scared you were, because I don't need that information. Obviously, I phrase it nicer than that because you have to. They're paying you $35 every 6 minutes. Well, they're not paying me, I guess. But you get the idea. You get the idea. They're paying my outrageous car payment. Oh, speaking of my car payment, I thought I had it at 4.2%. I ended up getting it at like 3.3%. So that's better than 4.2. So my monthly car payment's like 160 some odd bucks a month. Crazy. How will I ever afford it? Anyway, I've rambled way too long. Jiminy. All right, thanks for watching. I hope everybody has a great weekend, or at least a wonderful Friday. And I may try to find someone to have a discussion with on Sunday. I may not. I don't know. It just depends on how motivated I am. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.